G'day guys, it's Nick here, and recently in the comments of one of our videos, one of you guys asked us that besides the colour of the tongue, what is the difference with blue tongue lizards and goannas? So in this video, we're going to share with you 5 of the major differences between the blue tongue skinks and the Australian monitor lizards. Stick around. So the first major difference between the monitor lizards, or the goannas that we call them here in Australia, and the blue tongue lizards is actually the tongue, but not in the way that you think. It's actually in the shape of the tongue. You see, blue tongue lizards, just like all the rest of the skinks, have a short, fat, fleshy tongue like you or me. Monitor lizards, on the other hand, have a long, forked tongue. There we go. So basically, she has a tongue much like a snake. That means that she can smell left from right. So while a blue tongue still smells with their tongue, it's not designed to work quite the same way as a goanna. These guys are active predators. These guys are following the trails of mice and rats and snakes, looking for birds' nests and things, and that tongue is the way that they sense the world around them much more accurately than the blue tongue lizard does. As far as the colour goes, while you might imagine that one's got a pink tongue and one's got a blue tongue, this is not necessarily the case. You see, the vast majority of blue tongues, of course, have blue tongues. It's where their name comes from. But there is at least one species, the pygmy blue tongue skink, that actually has a pink tongue. On top of that, in the slender blue tongue family, if we want to look a little bit further, there is the pink-tongued skink. And in captivity, there is blue tongue lizards that have been bred to be different colours that also lack blue tongues. Now, goannas, on the other hand, can and often do have pink tongues. But just like we can have different coloured eyes, different goannas or different monitor lizards can have different coloured tongues too. And we do get goannas with blue tongues. If you guys watch Camp Kennan's channel on YouTube, which I'm sure you probably do, and you might know Slinky, his big Asian water monitor, if you look closely, he actually has a blue tongue. So yes, their tongue is one of the major differences, but it's not the colour, it's the shape and the way in which they use it. The second major difference between the blue tongue lizards and the goannas, or the monitor lizards, is the way in which they reproduce. You see, on this side we have a baby eastern blue tongue lizard, and on this side we have a young ridge-tailed goanna, or ridge-tailed monitor. Now, these two species grow to be about the same size, but they arrive here in different ways. The blue tongue lizard, and pretty much all of their close relatives, give birth to live young. The goannas, on the other hand, all of them lay eggs. There is no live-bearing monitor lizards. So monitor lizards lay eggs, the blue tongue lizards, and a lot of their other closely related skinks all give birth to live young. So they reproduce in different ways. The third major difference between the blue tongue lizards and the goannas is their diet. Now, we have about 6 species of blue tongues here in Australia and a couple overseas. And while some will eat more insects and some will eat more vegetation, as a general rule of thumb, they are all omnivores trending towards herbivory. Now, monitor lizards, on the other hand, like Big Buckley here, are more or less completely carnivorous. While smaller ones will of course eat insects, bigger ones like this guy will eat things like rabbits and snakes and birds, right up to the Komodo dragon, who is of course a monitor lizard himself. Now, there is actually 3 species of herbivorous monitor lizards. They all live in the Philippines. So if you're talking about goannas, you're probably talking about Australian monitor lizards. All Australian monitor lizards eat animals, from insects to big animals. But yeah, their diets are different too. The fourth major difference between the blue tongue lizards and the goannas, in my opinion anyway, is just their diversity. You see, blue tongue lizards, when we include things like the shingleback, who is a blue tongue lizard, are reasonably diverse. And these guys do live in a range of ecosystems, from the arid interior down to places like Tasmania. They all live much the same lifestyle. They're all fairly equivalent in size. The pygmy blue tongue might be a quarter of the size of the big blue tongues, but they're all roughly equivalent in size, live the same lifestyle. These sort of fossorial or terrestrial lizards rummaging through the undergrowth, eating an omnivorous diet with much the same body plan, living in much the same way. The goannas, on the other hand, who also still follow a fairly standard body plan throughout all the species, are adapted to a huge variety of lifestyles. You see, we've got things like the lace monitor, or the tree goanna, who is almost completely arboreal. They spend the vast majority of their time in trees. The ridge-tailed monitors, who are what we call saxicolous. These guys have little spiny tails, and they basically live in the cracks in between rocks, and they're designed to fill that niche and live in that kind of habitat. We've also got things like The water monitors, who have laterally compressed tails like crocodiles to live in the water. We've got monitor lizards who spend most of their time under the sand. These guys live a wide variety of lifestyles. On top of that, they're also highly diverse in terms of size. While the blue-tongued lizards follow much the same size throughout the species, the monitor lizards go from tiny little dwarf monitors right up to the Komodo dragon, which is the biggest lizard alive today. So yeah, in terms of size and lifestyle, the monitor lizards, or the goannas, in my opinion, are significantly more diverse. Now, the fifth major difference is in their taxonomy. Now, while taxonomy might not be the most exciting part of this video, taxonomy is basically the way that scientists, zoologists, things like this, basically break animals into their different categories based on degrees of relation, traits they share in common, things like this. Now, the monitor lizards all fit into the genus or the group that we call varanids, and they're actually the only genus within a much larger group of lizards as well. So these guys, taxonomically speaking, are fairly isolated from a lot of the other lizards. The blue-tongued lizards, on the other hand, fit into the genus that we call Teliqua. That makes up all the blue-tongued lizards, along with the shingleback and things like this. But the larger group of lizards they fit within is the skinks. So these guys share a common ancestor with things like Cunningham skinks, the tiny little garden skinks, the Solomon Island skinks, things like this. So taxonomically speaking, we also fit them into vastly different groups within the group of animals that we collectively call lizards. So taxonomically speaking, they're fairly different animals too. So there you have it, guys. There's a few of the things that I consider to be defining features that separate the blue-tongued lizards and the goannas, and why, in my opinion, the tongue alone is not really the feature that makes these two groups so unique from one another. But let me in the comments what you guys think. Now, if you have enjoyed this video and you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, things like that. If you'd like us to answer your question in the comments sometime, leave a question down below in sort of one sentence that we can address, and I will try and make a video on it. But other than that, guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, as I said, subscribe, comment, all that sort of jargon. Check on back next week. There's more wildlife content coming. But between now and then, be nice to wildlife, have a good one, and take care.